Are we able to reconcile our differences between natives of this land of Canada and us as settlers here in Canada who now consider ourselves Canadians? Are we able to come together, reconcile the things of the past, and to be willing to give back this land to those who are natives to this land, to those that still are really honoring and respecting the ways of nature, the ways of this land. And so I'm going to share with you something that is not political, but a perspective of that of healing and reconciliation, which begins within all of us. And I feel as somebody who doesn't necessarily relate as a white man or a European settler. I was born and raised here in Canada, though my skin is white and I don't feel I necessarily have any native blood, although I've never checked. I relate very much to this colonization process, though, that we've all been affected by in different stages of our family histories. And so I can recognize that we too, as European settlers in this country, have also gone through this colonization process and were likely deeply affected and forced this way of life onto us. So I can imagine there was probably equal amount of violence and bloodshed as there was here in Canada on this land, which was known potentially as Turtle Island and not as Canada. So coming back to understand where we're at and how to move forward, I think is so important for us as more and more of us as Canadians and citizens of this planet are recognizing that we are children of the earth and that the earth is our home, and really important to take care of Mother Earth as she takes care of us, giving us everything we have and everything we need. So it's now becoming quite clear that the people who are running this country of Canada and many countries around the world don't necessarily care about the rights of the land or the rights of the common people, you and I, who really run this country. This country runs because of us and our contributions and support. So, it's really up to us to be able to recognize that we have this power to change as well, that this change comes from us. And we have this power to choose differently, to recognize if things aren't working, then there's reasons for that. And we need to address those reasons and hopefully come to develop solutions that actually serve and support us as humans here in this country, and also recognizing that the changes we make in this country can really inspire and support changes happening all around the world. And so what I'm proposing seems quite drastic in the sense of giving the land back to the natives and trust that they may be able to guide and support this nation, this land, and all of us in ways that they actually care about our needs, our desires, and our rights. And, if you go back to the start of history, I believe that this way of living in alignment with creation and with nature came from many years of experience, many generations of learning to work with nature and understand the laws of creation and our connection to Creator, and the intricate power and connection we have as tribes and as communities within communities, and how to function in relation to one another, hopefully in peaceful and harmonious ways. So here now, I believe we're in this stage where tribes are able to come together, and hopefully leaders of the tribes are able to set aside their differences, and those that are able and willing to stand for these basic core rights that we have as humans and that we need to take a stance for, that they can come together and set aside their differences and do so in ways where they're not necessarily able to be compromised by money or by fear, through threats and all of these things. And I know even voicing this with you right now requires courage, and every step that we might need to take requires so much courage. And as Canadians, I see we tend to be quite afraid to ruffle any feathers. We tend to be quite afraid to stand up even for ourselves and for others out of fear of being judged or criticized, and see more important than ever that we have to be quite selfless in our ability to express our opinions, even if they're not being heard or understood, and trusting that we seek to understand one another, but really have to stand for our core human rights here now more than ever, as we're seeing the corruption of our current government and past years of the governmental system, and how many of us really wanted to create change through our votes and see, even before all of this clear corruption was taking place on the surface and clearly has not been dealt with in terms of the actions and decisions of Trudeau and the government there in place when taking place over the last years, that he crossed the line and broke many laws along the way, and yet he was not held accountable, and still, I believe, is not being held accountable potentially. And that sort of just continued now with Mark Carney. So, I mean, it's not about politics. It's not about liberals and NDPs and getting lost in these ideas and PC and all these different parties of government, but recognizing that the government system itself isn't supporting us. It's not created to serve and support the people. Even maybe it was initially. It's now gotten to the point where it's lost its focus and its purpose. And so it seems to be doing the opposite now in terms of working against its people and having the people work for the government rather than the government working for us in a way. So we can see how far it's gotten and that it's time to address it. And the question is, how do we address it? How do we address when the system itself is one of corruption? And if anyone can understand this the most, it would be, of course, our Native brothers and sisters who, from the very start of their experience with this sort of way of thinking and the systems that have sort of swept across this land, it's been corrupt from the very start and continues to be corrupt here now. So nothing has changed, nothing has evolved from that point. And if we understand politics, is that it tends to be a lot of saying one thing and doing the other, a lot of dishonesty, lack of transparency, and all of these things that, hopefully if we could create a new system, it would have these aspects that we're needing and values at the core of it. So, the natives of this land and how they were treated, it's really important to understand this for a lot of us as Canadian settlers, we'll say, in terms of understanding the actions that took place and how it deeply affected them then and continue to affect them now, multi-generations later, and the realization that this systematic violence is still taking place. The deceit and the lies and the corruption are still taking place. And often the political two-facedness, we'll say, the lack of honesty continues to take place. And so we can see furthermore that the system itself is not only corrupt, but something I would say is really quite narcissistic, in terms of the manipulation and control. So if you want to really furthermore understand this relation to the government, it really helps to become aware of what it means to be in relationship with somebody who is narcissistic, because it's the exact same thing right down to the T. And again, it's not something I want to go into here now, but for fellow Canadian settlers, it's important to recognize the true history and what's occurred, not just the history of the the books that we were taught in school, but to understand the violence that took place, and yeah, the bloodshed that took place, and everything else that was done throughout the many years to really take away the power of the natives, to destroy their culture, their ways of life, their language, and furthermore instill this belief system and religious ideas that were forced upon them and therefore taken away from them in their own belief system. So we can see now quite clearly, I can anyways, that the ideas of God or creator, is more the common word that would have been used, um, are that of the same, that we actually have same ideas, but different understandings of them based on what we've learned and what we've been taught. But, the natives, of course, really integrates the importance of Mother Earth being that of creation as well, and the importance of honoring this part of creation as this part of creation honors us. So it's really important to understand the value that this belief system has, and how it's really aligned and integrated maybe with your own belief system of spirituality, of understanding life, the purpose of life, whether you're involved in religion or completely against religion, that there are core things as humans that, we can easily come together. And that's the importance of taking care of our land, and the importance of taking care and creating a culture that supports our children, because we see now more than ever, when a child is brought into this world in a healthy way and supported in a healthy way in this pivotal time of their life as children, then it allows them, of course, to be confident and what we could say successful in their ability to express themselves in this world, uh, and to develop and maintain healthy relationships with others. So this is like what our culture, our society is made up on, as individuals who are healthy, who are happy, and are able to um, share their gifts with this world, with this nation, with their community in ways that allow the community to thrive as a whole. So the thriving of each individual is celebrated as it contributes to the whole culture, the whole community, the whole tribe, the whole nation, and all of this planet. So it's really at the foundation of our being, and time that we start to really utilize our common sense while we still have it, to really discern for ourselves, what is working, what isn't working, and are we able to come to this point in ourselves and recognize that, just out of values, that we can see the ways in which this land was conquered and taken over was not in alignment. It was not formed on honest agreements. It was agreements that were forced upon. And now we're seeing those treaties have been broken over and over again, recognizing that they were essentially manipulation tactics, they were lies, and the actions that continue to take place are proving that they're just trickery, in a sense, to have them sign these papers and then to do what they want and continue to do what they want. And then when they're addressed, they will address what's being said on the surface and say, yes, we're going to do something, and then they don't take action. They don't follow through with even supporting the basic needs of Native communities and what they're needing in terms of clean water, even, for example. So again, their needs are being pushed away, and our land is being destroyed. We'll push forward and say that we are, family here as Canadian settlers and natives of this land. and we're needing to bridge this gap to recognize that we're family. And it's my understanding that this was the initial understanding of the natives of this land to welcome us as family. And um, as a modern way of thinking, um, we would think, they're so naive. They were actually caring, they were actually trusting. And if I'm to put myself in their shoes and say, we as native settlers, we took advantage of that and we manipulated them, we lied to them. So we can own this part of ourselves, this behavior, and take responsibility as Canadian settlers to step forward and say, we want to give the land back to you. And we've proven that we um, aren't capable of stewarding this land in the ways that it deserves. And we call upon your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your ways to help really lead us forward and to recover from the pain that we've caused upon you and this land. And it's a shame that we weren't able to come together before the start of this process of arriving here on this land, but now can. And hopefully enough of us as Canadians or Canadian settlers can trust in this process. And I will share with you that immediately one of our fears is, of course, that we give back this land to the natives of this land, and then we ourselves are pushed off this land. We ourselves are violated and destroyed. And so I think that there can be a really big misunderstanding right now in terms of what that might mean if we were to take this stance forward for our nation and for our people, recognizing that we are family and there is no separation between the natives of this land and Canadian settlers or people of this earth. Furthermore, recognizing that we are all this global family. And I feel more and more that as Canadian settlers, we need to understand this, and that it can be helpful that it comes from natives who are speaking about this reconciliation and decolonization process. Because we're having to decolonize our minds, all of us, and this colonization process has disconnected us from understanding the ways of the land, the ways of creation and creator, and this golden rule of recognizing that we're all family and interconnected with one another. And of course, in the Bible, they speak about treating your neighbor as you want to be treated yourself. So there's aspects of this, what I would call the golden rule, within all teachings, and most of us carry this awareness and this knowledge still now, hopefully, and can relate to this most basic form of common sense and not continue to be separated with certain ideas and concepts between right and wrong and left and right and blue and red and the color of our skin and the many different ways in which we've been segregated, and needing to come back to our hearts and recognize our core values and needs as humans again, and learn to work together as humans, learn to understand one another, and restore trust, that we can actually trust in one another. We can develop a system based upon transparency and trust, and one that actually serves and supports humanity. Now is this great time, this great opportunity to recognize the wrongdoings of the past and to move forward together as a family, as a tribe. And I feel like we as Canadian settlers now have this opportunity and this responsibility, and it's not going to come from our government, who continue to be corrupt and are busy politicking, we'll just summarize that. It's not going to come from them. It needs to come from us as individuals, voicing ourselves here now in any way that you feel called to, and doing this inner work in ourselves as well, to know that we're safe, and to recognize what is and isn't working, and to trust that through this process that we can find a better way. And yeah, I believe part of this process is to acknowledge the pain that we have perpetuated. And so we're in a really difficult situation because we ourselves were not the perpetrators in a sense, and nor are we the perpetrators now in how we're living. Um, and a lot of the settlers that came here were under this colonized mind. We were colonized when arriving here. And so we had these ways, possibly for some of us, to think that the modern way is better, it's more advanced, and the old ways are old fashioned and primitive and not working. Like, so we may have had these ideas, and some of us still have these ideas. And we're in a sense placing ourselves above the laws of creation, placing ourselves above creator, and wanting things to be how we want them to be, wanting things so much so that we want to control them, we want to force them. And if we have the power to do it, then it's easier. But what we're creating is a path of destruction, and it might give us what we want in the short term, but we're seeing in the long term it's creating a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and it's not allowing us to actually thrive. So this way of thinking of the colonized mind, the modern mind of the modern man, is really destructive, and something we need to recognize within ourselves, that maybe there is a different way, and hopefully it's more imbalanced with understanding the caring, nurturing aspects that we have as humans, and that's more ingrained for mothers, for grandmothers, for women in general, that we come back to understand this importance of caring about our children, about ourselves, about one another, and how it's really a long-term thing to envision caring for people now, but for the future. And I know in some tribes they speak about 7 generations, really taking care, not only this generation, but what does it mean to make decisions based on 7 generations down the road? And that's so forward thinking. Like, that's advanced thinking when you really take that into account. That's far more advanced than us living for ourselves, seeking instant gratification here and now. So you can see how this modern way of thinking, how we've devolved. And so this wisdom of our native brothers and sisters was developed and shared and passed on from generation to generation, was the intricate fabric of our ability to survive here on earth, but also learn to thrive and work together. So there's so much to learn from this, there's so much to be gained from it, and I would hope that our systems can be developed based on these concepts, and so that these systems can support our entire nation, from each community linked together, supporting the people of those communities, of those tribes, from the ground up, based on their needs, that they can actually be supported and met in ways that right now we are failing our people, and we are experiencing this failure. We're experiencing the family units falling apart. We're experiencing the challenges of the economy in its current standings, which isn't aligned from the ground up. So we are under these pressures, and we have been separated, and now finding ourselves in conflict to one another in ways that are destroying ourselves, consuming us, and our ability to just enjoy life and to enjoy our time with one another as family, as communities. So we have this exciting moment and this great opportunity to move forward. And again, hopefully we can take responsibility and work through any feelings of guilt that we have. Like, it's so deep within us as white Canadian settlers. Again, we'll just generalize. Now there's so many colors and religions and races here, um, moving to Canada. So it's changing quite quickly, and their understanding is quite different, I'm sure. But for those of us that were born here in Canada, we can feel this underlying sense of guilt and shame, and therefore try to deny, because we're not the perpetrators ourselves. We can try to deny this pain and suffering. We could even look at the surface of how natives are living here and now after being affected by this colonization process. And we can point the finger and say, looking at problems with alcohol and homelessness, or incarceration rates, or whatever it is that's happening. A lot of it is happening systemically, causing these things. But we can still try to point the finger and say, you're the problem, when it's actually us that are needing to take ownership and recognize, wow, what we've done in the past deeply affected you and continues to hurt you. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for the pain that we've caused you. We can take responsibility from it and not feel needing to avoid that responsibility because it wasn't us, or that we actually aren't guilty because we weren't the ones that did it. And there's truth to that as well. So to humble ourselves and to recognize what we did was wrong, and to be willing to have the trust that maybe we didn't have before, to say, it's time to give back the land. It's time to trust that it can be stewarded in a healthy, harmonious way, which supports our land, all of its resource, all of its animals, insects, the trees, the plants, and that it can support us as humanity, that it's not necessarily going to be an out of balance black and white way in which we become more suppressed or our economy fails. Actually, what we will notice is that humanity can thrive, and even our economy can thrive much greater ways than we could ever envision, when we're actually tuned in with the abundance of nature and working with the abundance that it provides us as a nation of nations. So in trust and with love, may we move forward with peace and come together with all the love of our hearts, because we are family and this is our home, this is our land. And I would hope that our native brothers and sisters can also find it in their hearts, to have the courage and strength to acknowledge us through all of it, that we're still brothers, we're still family, and to come back to recognize the core values of their ways of life, beyond the effects of the colonization process, which have deeply affected the ways of thinking for many natives, and deeply impacted their ways of life, of course, in destroying and killing tribes and families. So it's deep, deep work that we're being asked to do within ourselves. And now it's all being brought to the surface in this moment of time where we're able to transition back towards recognizing this is a land of peace. And what does that mean? And how can we thrive from knowing this peace within ourselves in relation to one another once again? So hopefully you gain something from this. I'm really just here speaking from my heart. I'm no expert in politics or the colonization process. I'm simply someone who cares very deeply about our country, about our land, about our people, and about the future generations, our children, to be able to thrive on this land. And just felt called to share this message. So thank you for listening if you made it this far.